When my ex's mother called me after almost a year of silence, I should have let the phone ring. Not because I hated her. I never could. Diane Whittaker had always been kind to me, even when her daughter, Lauren, slowly made me feel like being kind was not enough. Diane was the woman who handed me coffee when I showed up early to help Lauren move furniture. She was the woman who noticed when I was tired before anyone else did. She was the woman who once told me, "Caleb, don't let anyone make your good heart feel small." I had carried that sentence longer than I wanted to admit, so when her name lit up on my phone on a rainy Thursday morning, my chest tightened before I even answered. "Mrs. Whittaker," I said. There was a small pause, then her voice came through, warm but careful. "Caleb, I'm sorry to bother you." "You're not bothering me," I said too fast. She heard it. Diane always heard what people tried to hide. "The storm last night knocked part of my back fence loose," she said. "The gate will not close and the repair company cannot come until next week. I know this is awkward, but I did not know who else to call." I looked across the job site where rainwater was dripping from the roof beams. I had work, but not enough to stop me, and maybe that was the problem. Part of me wanted a reason to go back to that house. "I can come by after work," I said. "You do not have to." "I know." The quiet between us felt strange. Not bad, just full. Her house was on a calm street outside Asheville, North Carolina, with tall trees and wide porches. I had been there many times when Lauren and I were together. Family dinners, summer cookouts. One Christmas Eve where I showed up in jeans because Lauren forgot to tell me everyone dressed nice. Diane had smiled and said, "At least one man here looks useful." I remembered that too. When I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I saw was the fence leaning behind the house. One whole section had pulled away from the post, and the gate was hanging low like it had given up. The second thing I saw was Diane. She stood near the back porch in a pale blue blouse, fitted jeans, and old gardening gloves. Her brown hair was pinned at the back of her neck, with a few loose strands touching her cheek. She was older than me, but not in a way that made her seem distant. She carried herself with a calm beauty that did not ask for attention but somehow got it anyway. I got out of my truck and hated that I noticed. "Caleb," she said softly. "Mrs. Whittaker." Her mouth curved a little. "You can call me Diane." I looked down at my tool bag. Diane. Her name felt different when I said it. She led me around the house and the yard smelled like wet grass and cedar. A wind chime moved softly near the porch. 2 mugs sat on the small table outside, but only one had been used. "I tried to hold the board up with that old brace," she said, pointing near the post. I crouched and checked it. This actually helped. "You do not have to sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised," I said. "I'm impressed." She folded her arms, but her smile slipped through. "That may be worse." I smiled before I could stop myself. That was the dangerous thing about Diane. She made things feel easy. With Lauren, I always felt like I had to become more exciting, more ambitious, more loud. I was never enough as I was. I was too steady, too quiet, too safe. But with Diane, quiet did not feel like failure. It just felt like peace. I worked for nearly an hour. She stayed nearby, picking up broken branches and moving flower pots away from the fence. Every few minutes, she brought me something I did not ask for: a clean towel, a bottle of water, a better extension cord, not in a way that felt like she was hovering. She just noticed. At one point, I looked up and caught her watching me tighten the hinge bolts. She looked away quickly and a soft color touched her face. I pretended not to see. Maybe that was the decent thing. Maybe it was the cowardly thing. "You've been well?" she asked after a while. I kept my eyes on the latch. "Mostly." "That means no." I let out a small laugh. "That means mostly." She stepped a little closer. "I heard you got promoted." "Project supervisor," I said. "It sounds bigger than it feels." "I always thought you would do well." I looked up then. Bad idea. The afternoon light had come through the clouds and it caught the side of her face. She looked tired but beautiful, not perfect. Real. The kind of beautiful that made a man feel trusted before he had earned it. Lauren used to say I was too settled, I said before I could stop myself. Diane's face changed, just a little. She said a lot of things before she understood them, she said. The words hit me quietly. I turned back to the fence because wood and screws were safer than the way she was looking at me. By the time I fixed the gate, the sun was low and golden behind the trees. I tested the latch twice. It held. There, I said. It should be fine now. I can come back another day and stain the new board so it matches. Diane stood on the porch, pulling off her gloves slowly. You do not have to. I know. She smiled at that, but this time her smile did not fade. Then she said, finish it today and I'll make it worth your while. I froze with one hand still on the gate. She must have heard how it sounded, because her eyes widened a little. I mean lunch, she said quickly. Or dinner, I guess. I made soup this morning. That is all I meant. But it was not all I heard. The yard became too quiet. The wind chime moved once, soft and silver. Diane looked down at the gloves in her hand, and for the first time since I had known her, she seemed nervous around me. I should have said I had to go. I should have packed my tools and driven away before the past became something neither of us knew how to name. Instead, I looked at the fence, then back at her. I can stay, I said. Diane lifted her eyes to mine, and the small smile she tried to hide told me the fence was not the only thing that had brought me back. I stayed. That one small choice should not have felt like stepping into a storm, but it did. I finished adjusting the last loose board while Diane went inside. Through the kitchen window, I could see her moving around, taking bowls from a cabinet, setting napkins on the small table near the window. I told myself it was just food, just soup, just a thank you from a woman whose fence I had fixed, but my hands moved slower than they needed to. The fence was done before I wanted it to be. I packed my tools, wiped the dirt from my palms, and stood in the yard for a moment, looking at the new board beside the old ones. It was lighter than the rest. Anyone could see it had been replaced. Maybe that was why I kept staring at it. Some things could be fixed, but they still showed where they had broken. Diane opened the back door. You can wash up inside. I turned toward her. Are you sure? She gave me a look. Caleb, you have eaten in this house before. That was different. Her eyes held mine. I know. Neither of us smiled after that. I stepped into the kitchen and the past came at me in small pieces. The yellow curtains over the sink, the ceramic bowl near the door where Lauren used to throw her keys, the old radio on the shelf. I had stood in that kitchen many times, but never like this. Never with Lauren gone and Diane standing a few feet away, watching me as if she was trying to understand what kind of silence had entered her house with me. I washed my hands at the sink. She stood behind me, close enough that I could hear the soft sound of her breathing as she opened a drawer. You still do not like too much mustard, right? She asked. I looked over my shoulder. You remember that? She paused with a small jar in her hand. I remember things. That should not have touched me as much as it did. Lauren had forgotten my birthday once and laughed it off because she said I was not the kind of man who cared about that stuff. She used to forget how I took my coffee, what days I had early work, what stories I had already told her, and I had let it happen. I had made myself easy to overlook because I thought love meant not asking for too much. Diane remembered mustard. I dried my hands slowly. Thank you. For mustard. For remembering. Her face softened, but she looked away first. Sit down before the soup gets cold. We ate at the small kitchen table, not the dining room. That made it feel more personal. The dining room belonged to family dinners and loud holidays. This table felt like truth. There were 2 bowls, 2 glasses of iced tea, and a plate of warm bread between us. For a while we spoke about safe things. My work, her garden, the storm, the broken fence. She told me one of her rose bushes had fallen sideways in the wind, and I said roses were always dramatic. She laughed softly, and I liked the sound too much. Then the quiet came back. Diane turned her spoon slowly in her bowl. Lauren called me last week. I kept my eyes on my glass. How is she? She is busy. That sounds like Lauren. She asked about you. That made me look up. Diane's face was careful, not in the way you think. I tried to smile, but it did not work. What way do I think? What? She asked if you were still working too much, if you had met anyone. Diane looked down. Then she said you were probably still the same. The same? I knew exactly how Lauren would have said it. Sweet but tired. Like being the same was another word for being stuck. I pushed my bowl away a little. She always wanted me to be someone else. Diane's voice was soft. No, she wanted herself to feel different, and she blamed you when she did not. I stared at her. She did not take the words back. She did not soften them into something easier. She just sat there looking at me with a kind of honesty that made my chest ache. You saw that? I asked. I saw more than I said. Why didn't you say it then? Because she was my daughter, Diane said. And because you were trying so hard to be good to her, that I did not want to become another voice telling you what to carry. I looked toward the window. Outside, the gate stood straight now. It should have made me feel proud. Instead, I felt exposed. Before I could answer, Diane's phone rang on the counter. She glanced at the screen and her whole expression changed. I knew before she said anything. Lauren, I asked. Diane nodded. You can answer. I know. But she did not pick it up. The phone stopped, then started again. Diane closed her eyes for 1 second, then answered. Hi, honey. I looked down at my hands. Lauren's voice came through faint but sharp. Did someone fix the fence? Diane's eyes flicked to me. Caleb came by. There was a pause, then Lauren laughed. Mom, seriously? Diane's mouth tightened. He knew how to fix it. Of course he did. That is his thing. He loves being needed. My jaw locked. It was such a small sentence, but it carried every old wound with it. The way Lauren could turn loyalty into weakness. The way she could make help sound like hunger. The way she could make me feel foolish for caring. Diane stood very still. Then she said, calm and clear, that was unkind. Another pause. Lauren said something I could not hear. Diane looked at me again, and this time her eyes were full of apology, not for herself, for me. I'll call you later, she said, and ended the call. The kitchen went quiet. I stood. I should go. Diane stood too. Caleb. It is fine. No, she said, it is not. That stopped me. She walked around the table but kept some space between us. That is not how I see you. I swallowed. You do not have to fix what she said. I am not fixing it. I am telling you the truth. I looked at her then. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. Lauren called you boring because she did not know what peace looked like. I let out a small laugh, but it hurt. Don't say things like that. Why? Because I might believe you. The room changed, not loudly, not with one big movement. It changed in the quiet space between her breath and mine. Diane's hand rested on the back of a chair. My hand was on the edge of the table. We were not touching, but it felt like we had already crossed something. She looked away first. I should not have said that. I shook my head. Maybe someone should have said it a long time ago. Her eyes came back to mine. There were too many reasons to leave. Lauren, the past, Diane's last name. The way people would talk if they knew I was standing in her kitchen feeling something I had no right to feel. But there was one reason to stay. For the first time in almost a year, I did not feel like I had to shrink myself to be accepted. I picked up my tool bag by the door. The new board still needs stain. Diane's voice was quiet. You do not have to come back. I know. She held my gaze. I opened the back door, then stopped. I can come Saturday. Her lips parted like she wanted to say no, but could not make herself lie. That would help, she said. It was the safest answer. But when I walked to my truck and looked back, Diane was still standing on the porch, one hand on the railing, watching me leave like she wanted me to stay and was too decent to ask. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Mom told me you came over. Please don't make this strange. I looked from the message to Diane on the porch. For the first time since Lauren left me, I did not feel like I owed her the smallest version of myself. I went back Saturday. I told myself it was because the new board needed stain, but that was only the kind of lie a man tells when he wants to keep his pride clean. The fence was already fixed. The gate latched. The post stood straight. If I wanted to be smart, I would have left it alone and let Diane hire someone else to finish the color. But I was tired of being smart in ways that felt like running. Diane was in the backyard when I arrived, kneeling beside a flower bed with a basket of weeds beside her. She wore a soft green shirt, jeans, and a straw hat that shaded her face. When she heard my truck, she looked up. For 1 second, her face lit up. Then she remembered herself and stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "You came," she said. "I said I would." "I know." She looked toward the fence. "People say things all the time." "Some people do." That made her smile, but it faded quickly. There was something different in the air now. Last time the tension had surprised us. This time we had both brought it with us. I took the stain, brush, and cloth from my truck. Diane stepped closer. "I made coffee," she said. "Is that part of the payment?" "The soup was payment. Coffee is a bribe." "For what?" She looked at the fence, then back at me. "For not leaving the second the board dries." I should have laughed, I almost did, but her voice had too much truth under it. "That depends how good the coffee is," I said. "It is better than Lauren's." The words came out before she could stop them. We both went still. Diane looked away, color rising softly in her cheeks. "I should not compare." "No," I said, opening the stain can, "but you are not wrong." For the next hour, I worked on the fence while she moved around the yard pretending to stay busy. She trimmed roses that did not need trimming. She swept the porch twice. She carried a flower pot from one side of the steps to the other, then moved it back again. Every few minutes we found reasons to speak. She asked about my work. I told her about an old house we were repairing near downtown Asheville, a house with cracked floors but strong bones. "You always liked fixing what other people wanted to throw away," she said. I brushed stain slowly across the new board. "Sometimes things are worth saving." She did not answer. I looked over my shoulder. She was watching me, her eyes softer than they should have been. Then the wind moved fast through the yard and caught the brim of her straw hat. It lifted from her head and I reached out without thinking. I caught it before it blew away, but my fingers brushed her hair. Diane froze. So did I. My hand was close to her face, holding the hat between us. Her hair had come loose near her cheek. Her eyes lifted to mine, and for one breath the whole world seemed to stop moving. I could smell the coffee from the porch, the wet earth near the flower bed, the faint lemon soap on her skin. I should have stepped back. Instead, I stood there like a man hearing his own heart for the first time in months. "Thank you," she said, "for the hat." Her voice dropped. "For not pretending that did not happen." My hand lowered slowly. I gave the hat back to her. "I do not know what happened," I said. "Yes, you do." That answer was gentle, but it hit harder than any accusation. I turned back to the fence because wood was safer than her eyes. I finished the stain with careful strokes, taking more time than I needed. Diane did not rush me. When I was done, she poured 2 cups of coffee and we sat on the porch. The chairs were close enough for our knees to almost touch, but not close enough to be an accident. For a while, we only looked at the yard. Then Diane said, "Lauren called me again." I kept my hand around the coffee cup. I figured. She thinks I am being foolish. For asking me to finish the fence. For asking you to come back. The coffee felt hot against my palm. Diane stared into her cup. She said, "People will talk." "Will they?" "Probably." I leaned back. "Then maybe we should not give them anything true." The second I said it, I regretted it. Diane looked at me and I could see the hurt before she tried to hide it. "That came out wrong," I said. "I know what you meant." "No," I said, "I'm not sure I do." She set her cup down. Her hands were steady, but her voice was not. "Caleb, I need to say something clearly before this turns into something we hide inside jokes and coffee." I did not move. "I cared about you when you were with Lauren," she said, "but not like this. I would never have allowed that. You were good to my daughter. You were good in my house. I noticed that because I was her mother." She took a breath, "And because I am a person who notices." My throat tightened. "After you two ended, I missed you," she said. "At first I told myself I missed your help, the way you fixed things. The way the house felt less empty when someone steady was in it." She looked at me then, but that was not all of it. The porch went quiet except for the wind moving through the trees. "Diane," I said, "I am not asking you for anything. I know, that is why I am saying this now." Her eyes held mine. "I will not be a foolish woman chasing her daughter's ex because she feels lonely. That is not what I think this is." "What do you think it is?" There were safe answers, easy answers, answers that would let us step backward and pretend we had not already reached the edge of something. But I was tired of making myself smaller just because someone else might be uncomfortable with the truth. "I think Lauren left because she thought peace was boring," I said. "And I think sitting here with you feel like being understood by someone who knows the difference." Diane's eyes filled, but she did not look away. Before she could answer, the back gate clicked. We both turned. Lauren stepped into the yard. She was not alone. A man stood behind her, tall, clean-cut, sunglasses pushed up into his hair. His hand rested on the gate I had fixed. Lauren looked from me to Diane, then to the 2 coffee cups on the porch. Her face changed. Not heartbreak, not even jealousy. It was something sharper, like part of her past had started living without her permission. "Well," she said with a smile I knew too well, "this is cozy." Diane stood. "Lauren." I stood too, slower. Lauren's eyes moved over my work clothes, the stained brush near the fence, then back to her mother. "So this is why the fence needed fixing twice." Diane's voice stayed calm. "Do not do that." "Do what?" "Make something ugly because you do not know how to respect something uncomfortable." Lauren laughed, but it sounded forced. "Mom, he is my ex." Diane looked at her daughter, then at me. "I know who he is," she said. The whole yard went silent. Lauren stared at me next. "And you, what exactly are you doing here?" I could have apologized. I could have stepped back. I could have become the quiet man Lauren expected me to be. But I looked at Diane, and she looked scared, honest, and stronger than anyone had the right to be in that moment. Then I looked back at Lauren. "I came back because I wanted to," I said. Lauren stared at me like she had heard the wrong voice come out of my mouth. For almost 3 years I had been the calm one, the easy one. The man who carried boxes, fixed shelves, changed tires, and said, "It's okay," even when it was not okay. I think she expected me to do that again, to lower my eyes, to explain myself, to make the moment easier for her. But I did not move. Diane stood beside the porch steps, her face pale but steady. The man behind Lauren shifted near the gate, looking like he wished he had stayed in the car. Lauren crossed her arms. "You came back because you wanted to." "Yes," I said. Her eyes moved to Diane. "And you are okay with this?" Diane took a slow breath. "I'm okay with him being here." What? Lauren laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom, he is my ex-boyfriend." "I know. You cannot just have coffee with him on the porch like this is normal." Diane's eyes sharpened. "Do not speak to me like I am a child." The yard went quiet. Lauren blinked like her mother had slapped the air between them. "I am not trying to control you," Lauren said. "Yes, you are," Diane answered. "Maybe you do not mean to. Maybe you are scared. Maybe this feels strange and wrong to you. I understand that, but you do not get to walk away from someone and still decide where he is allowed to stand." Lauren looked at me then, and for the first time I did not see confidence in her face. I saw fear. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing the story she had told herself. The story where I was simple, safe, easy to leave. The story where her mother was only her mother and not a woman with a heart of her own. The story where everyone stayed exactly where Lauren left them. "You are both making this sound bigger than it is," she said. Diane's voice became softer. "No, you are making it smaller because that is easier." The man near the gate cleared his throat. "Lauren, maybe we should go." She turned toward him. "Riley, please." So that was his name. Riley lifted both hands and stepped back. I almost felt sorry for him. Lauren looked at Diane again. People are going to talk. Diane nodded. Maybe. You do not care. I care, Diane said, but I am tired of living like gossip gets a vote in my kitchen. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Lauren's eyes filled, but she did not cry. I am your daughter. Diane stepped closer to her. Yes, and I love you. That will never change. Then why does this feel like you are choosing him? Diane's face broke a little at that. She looked like a mother first in that moment. Not a woman in a green shirt with soft eyes. Not the person I wanted more than I had allowed myself to say. Just a mother hearing her daughter hurt. I am not choosing him over you, Diane said. I am choosing not to erase myself to make you comfortable. Lauren looked down. I wanted to say something, but I knew this part was not mine, so I stood still and let Diane own her truth. After a long moment, Lauren turned toward me. Were you trying to hurt me? She asked. No, I said. Then why her? I looked at Diane, then back at Lauren. Because when I am with her, I do not feel like I have to become louder just to be worth keeping. Lauren's face changed. That landed. I could see it. For a second, the old version of her almost came out, the sharp laugh, the quick answer, the way she used humor to step over anything that got too real. But this time she did not laugh. She swallowed and looked away toward the fence. I did make you feel that way, she said quietly. I did not answer right away. The truth was yes, she had, but it was not the kind of yes a man says to win. Yes, I said finally. You did. Lauren nodded once like the word hurt but did not surprise her. Riley opened the gate again, slower this time. Come on, he said gently. Lauren looked at her mother. I need time. Diane nodded. Take it. Then Lauren looked at me one last time. There was still pain in her face, but less anger now. Maybe because anger had done its job and left her with something harder. I do not understand this, she said. I know. She left with Riley and the gate clicked shut behind them. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Diane turned and walked into the kitchen. I followed her after a few seconds. She stood at the sink, both hands gripping the counter, her head lowered. The afternoon light came through the window and touched her hair. She looked strong and tired and terribly human. I am sorry, she said. For what? For bringing you into this. You did not bring me anywhere I did not choose to be. She turned around. Her eyes were wet. Caleb, I need to be sure. About what? That this is not because Lauren hurt you. That I am not just the first person who made you feel seen after someone made you feel small. I stepped closer, but not too close. I have thought about that, I said, and yes, part of me noticed you because you saw me. I needed that, I will not lie. Her face tightened. But that is not why I want to stay, I said. I want to stay because of how you tell the truth, because you remember small things, because your house feels peaceful without feeling empty, because you make quiet feel like something worth protecting. A tear slipped down her cheek. I reached out slowly. She did not move away. I touched her hand, just her hand, and it felt more serious than a kiss. We should not rush, she whispered. I know. People will talk. I know. Lauren may hate it for a while. I know that too. She gave a small laugh through her tears. You are not helping. I am trying not to lie. That made her smile, a real smile this time, soft, scared, beautiful. For a moment we stood there with our hands together, both old enough to know that wanting something did not make it simple. Then Diane stepped back. I need time, she said. It hurt, but I nodded. Then take it. I left without kissing her. That was the right thing. It also felt like the hardest thing I had done in a long time. When I reached my truck, my phone buzzed. It was Diane. Thank you for not making me choose between desire and dignity. I read it twice. Then another message came. But Caleb, I did want you to kiss me. I looked back at the kitchen window. Diane stood there with one hand against the curtain, watching me with fear and warmth and truth in her eyes. I typed back, I know. That is why I did not. For 2 weeks we moved slowly, a few texts, one phone call, then coffee downtown where there were no old memories sitting in the chairs with us. Diane wore a green dress and looked nervous. I loved that she was nervous. It meant this mattered. Lauren needed time too. She sent me one message that said, "I do not know what to do with this." I replied, "You do not have to do anything today, but do not make your mother ashamed for being seen." She did not answer for a long time. Months passed. Diane and I kept choosing honesty over hiding. We did not sneak around. We did not pretend it was easy. We let people think what they wanted and learned that most people stopped talking when there was no shame to feed. One evening at a small concert in the park, Diane reached for my hand while music played under warm string lights. Two people looked at us. One whispered. Diane's fingers tightened around mine. I did not let go. A year later, Lauren came to dinner. It was awkward at first. Then Diane burned the bread. I opened all the windows, and Lauren laughed so hard she had to sit down. That was the night I believed we might survive the strange shape of our story. 2 years after the fence broke, I asked Diane to marry me in her backyard near the gate I had fixed. The replaced board was still lighter than the others, easy to see if you knew where to look. Diane touched it and smiled through tears. "This fence caused a lot of trouble," she said. "No," I told her. "It told the truth." She said yes. Years later, when people asked how we got together, Diane usually said, "He fixed my fence." I said she made soup. Both were true, but the whole truth was this. Lauren looked at my piece and called it boring. Diane looked at the same piece and made room for it at her table. And I finally stopped believing that being steady made me easy to leave. Sometimes the person who truly sees you is not the person who had you first. Sometimes love begins with a broken fence, a quiet lunch, and one brave reason to stay.